Genesis 47. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers with their flocks and herds and everything they own have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked the brothers, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied to Pharaoh, "just as our fathers were." They also said to him, "We have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now please let your servants settle in Goshen." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock." So this is coming from Pharaoh, who has relied greatly on Joseph so far, and he's seen that relying on Joseph has paid off very well, at least in the first 2 years of famine. So he's saying, if there's any other great men in your family, let them come forward with their skills because I want them. So and then it says, "Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, 'How old are you?'" So this is crazy. So Jacob blesses the Pharaoh. So a lowly shepherd who is apparently detestable to Egyptians comes in before Pharaoh and blesses him. And Pharaoh asks, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." So this is interesting because I believe, some of the forefathers of Jacob lived well over 150 years. So, but apparently this is amazing to Pharaoh. I guess most other people don't live that long. And it does say somewhere earlier in Genesis that God will limit the years of a man to 120. So perhaps Pharaoh is under that limitation, and he's looking on at Jacob and he's saying, "How could you be this old?" Right? So then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. I'm surprised it doesn't say anything about Pharaoh's response here. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses? I'm not sure how to say that. I'm going to say Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food according to the number of their children. And you keep in mind there was a famine, so it probably would be rationed based on number in your household. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain they were buying, and he brought it to Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is all gone." "Then bring your livestock," said Joseph. "I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock, since your money is gone." So this is interesting because could they not just eat their livestock? And how were they even keeping their livestock alive if there was no food? I suppose there was still grass in the fields, but it must have been tight times. I mean, and they provisioned for 7 years to withstand this famine, but it appears that they've run out of food, so they're kind of consolidating. They're bringing all the food into Pharaoh, basically into the inner circle. And all the people in the land are coming to them and saying, like, "Hey, don't let us die before your eyes." So Joseph says, "Well, bring us your livestock and we'll trade for food." So he says, "I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock since your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep and goats, their cattle and donkeys, and he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all their livestock. So this is crazy. So all the people in the land of Egypt, and probably from all around, are bringing their livestock because they have no money yet. So basically this famine has completely just broken the entire economy in Egypt, and they're back to bartering, they're back to trading. And at that point, I guess they're probably using silver. And it says earlier in Genesis, Joseph's brothers were paying for grain with silver. So Pharaoh has amassed all of the precious metals that was used as money in Egypt. And now he's gathering to him all of the livestock. Then it says, when that year was over, they came to him the following year and said, "We cannot hide from our Lord the fact that since our money is gone and our livestock belongs to you, there is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land. Why should we perish before your eyes? we and our land as well. Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we, with our land, we will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed so that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate. So this is interesting. So I wonder, is this also the Egyptians? Let's see what this actually says. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. And it says Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain they were buying, and he brought it to Pharaoh's palace. So this isn't just Joseph's family. This isn't just the Hebrews. This is the Egyptians. This is everybody. Everybody is coming to Pharaoh, and they're saying, look, you've got all of our money. You've got all of our livestock. We have nothing left to give. Let us be in bondage. They say, we with our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed so that we may live and not die. So this is, I imagine, after these 7 years, this is how the Jews end up becoming slaves. Everybody offers themselves as slaves to Pharaoh because he has all the remaining food, he has all the livestock, he has all the wealth. They've given him everything in order to have something to eat. So Joseph brought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. The Egyptians, one and all, sold their fields because the famine was too severe for them. The land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude. From one end of Egypt to the other. However, he did not buy the land of the priests, because they received a regular allotment from Pharaoh and had food enough from the allotment Pharaoh gave them. That is why they did not sell their land. Joseph said to the people, Now that I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is seed for you so you can plant the ground. But when the crops come in, give a fifth of it to Pharaoh. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for the fields and as food for yourselves and your households and your children. So here we have a tax system forming, and it's 20% taxation. That's pretty high. That being said, it's not that hard to get into the 20% tax bracket in the U.S. People pay a lot of taxes in the U.S., more than 20% in a lot of cases. But give a fifth of it to Pharaoh, so a 20% tax on everything that they produce. You have saved our lives, they said. May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as a law concerning land in Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. It was only the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, If I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried. I will do as you say, he said. Swear to me, he said. Then Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. So now is this saying that Jacob's family was not part of this, this bondage? Did they not sell themselves into bondage for food? So the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. But I don't know if this is while they're receiving support from Pharaoh. Are they part of this? Have they sold themselves into bondage? I'm not sure. I would assume that's the case, but maybe not. They're also relatives of Joseph, who is very favored by Pharaoh. So it doesn't sound like they are. It sounds like they're living in this land of Goshen and they're prospering greatly, just like all of their fathers before them, just like Abraham, just like Isaac, and now Jacob is prospering as well. So perhaps they weren't in bondage, but eventually somehow they end up in bondage. And that's why we have Exodus, right? So, so Jacob comes to the end of his life, and he makes Joseph swear that he will bury him with his fathers, not in the land of Egypt. So that's Genesis 47. Kind of a sad story. Everyone is in bondage to Pharaoh now. Nobody has any food. They're trading themselves. They're saying, we've given all our money, we've given all our livestock, we have nothing else to trade, so now Pharaoh can have our land, he can have our bodies, we will be slaves, and there's a 20% tax issued over all of the produce that is produced. So that's Genesis 47. That's all I have to say about it. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.